To talk about more on the conference, we're joined by South African Special Risk Insurance Executive Manager for Stakeholder Management, Muzi Dladla. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, the forum provides an opportunity to share expertise and experience, essentially combating the threat of potential major economic loss resulting from terrorism. What have been some of the biggest discussion points coming out of the conference?
Thank you very much for having me. So the theme around this is just talking about global events and how the various countries, as part of the terrorism pools, IFTRIP, we can come together to talk about various aspects that relate to how to collaborate and manage these risks. So today we were talking about geopolitical risks and what other models, multi-tier models that we have and other countries have, and compare pretty much the risk mitigations, particularly as it relates to risk mitigation.
Delegates have described the global risk environment as increasingly complex as, you know, they look for the answers, exploring the challenges emanating from the impact of geopolitical tensions, climate change, terrorism, political violence. What form have these topics taken in reaching a solution from the pool of leaders there?
We try to give it a much more broader spectrum of covers. IFTRIP in itself, it focuses on PVT, which is political violence and terrorism. But the various members that are there, including SASRA, it doesn't just cover that. It covers SRCC, which is also riots and strikes and commercial and civil commotion as well. So in Australia, for example, they shared one of the models today where they cover cyclones. So the idea is for each and every country to talk about its risk landscape. What are the extreme catastrophe risks that that particular country is facing, and what can the various other entities that are there help in respect of how to put mechanisms in place in managing that. So for South Africa particularly, we presented one of our models today, the multi-tier models that look at the behavior of the various people that are protesting at any given time. So we have a multi-tier risk mitigation model that we presented, and there's a lot of data that we got, particularly from, I would say, Spain, the US, as well as Australia, as well as others in Europe, that shared how they have shaped it, which gave us a lot of perspective today.
As you explore the perspective, we know that Africa remains the epicenter of global terrorism, with sub-Saharan Africa accounting for 59% of all terrorism-related deaths worldwide. As you look at matters like that, I mean, we've just heard a gentleman who was at the conference speaking about the risk that insurers need to, to think about before they enter some areas. The critical infrastructure gets destroyed. What kind of responses and lessons, as you interact with the other countries, are needed to diffuse the persistent threat? More so as we examine the impact of a concerted global response.
It's quite a bit of a difficult one, because there are two aspects to it. There's the human life side of things, and then there is the critical infrastructure side, which is actually, when you talk about that type of catastrophes, it is largely related to the property, the infrastructure, and all of that. Interestingly enough, it came out that worldwide, only 1% of deaths actually are related to terrorism attacks and geopolitical tensions overall. So the focus is more related on property, on infrastructure, as well as obviously property that belongs to majority of the people that lives within those those countries. So one of the biggest things that we've seen, because largely it's how you layer the risk. So most entities would create a pool, which is why it is prevalent for us to have that. So all of these countries that have these are the ones that are facing these threats, and you would generally have another layer of reinsurance where you transfer the risk to other parties worldwide that are also diversifying. But one of the things that came out very strongly is that there are other alternatives, forms of capital, like cat bonds, for example, which I think 2 or 3 of the pools demonstrated today how actually they leverage that. So it is more in respect of how a government, at a sovereign level, it is layering its risk and using not only post-event mechanisms, but more ex ante, the ones that are before an event taking place. So these are some of the mechanisms that we spoke about. And again, I think it boils down to how a country at a sovereign level looks at risk layering. I think that's the biggest take-up for today.
And what are some of the expectations as the conversations develop and expand?
So the idea, largely for us as an IFTRIP member, and being the first, by the way, in the entire continent to host this, and you saw the president of IFTRIP is actually from the US, and our CEO is the deputy president. So ideally, it's for us to rebuild, first of all, I would say the brand SA. So we do a lot of business and a lot of reinsurance and insurance with many, many entities worldwide. And the one thing that is always said is that we are given reports that are written by South Africans about South Africa. The image of South Africa is not portrayed to be positive out there by South Africans, by entities as well. So this is the first step for us to go out there and signal South Africa is ready to lead in the global risk discourse. So, I mean, this also, it touches on us going into the G20 now in a few months. So this is the opportunity that we wanted to showcase how serious, innovative, and a collaborative partner that is shaping the future for resilience. That is the branding, the positioning that we would like to portray South Africa out there. It also helps as a country, when it comes to grey listing issues, the sentiment around there, because it fuels these things. And for us, being able to get access to capacity as well.
Very well. Thank you so much for speaking to us there as we wrap up some of the highlights and some of the focal areas coming out of the conference there.